Daniel and Margaret are going to release the truth of the entire history of the UFO UAP phenomenon.
Whoa. In a summer packed with loud titles like Masters of the Universe, Supergirl, Spider-Man, Brand New Day, and Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, this still may be the film that feels most like a true must-see theatrical event. And honestly, there are at least 5 very real reasons why. The first is the simplest, but maybe also the most powerful. The early reactions sound genuinely electrified. That difference matters. Early reactions can always skew positive, sure, but you can usually tell when people are just being polite and when they are actually buzzing from what they saw. With Disclosure Day, the energy feels real. Jim Hemphill called it top-tier Spielberg and said the film reminds you that he does this better than almost anyone in cinema history. Bill Bria went even further, describing David Koepp's screenplay as the X-Files meeting the Bible while also praising the performances and John Williams' score. Other reactions keep circling the same words: thrilling, strange, emotional, mysterious, bold. That is exactly the kind of language you want floating around a Spielberg sci-fi movie this close to release. Because it suggests the film is not simply good. It suggests the film may actually be alive. And that matters because audiences can feel when a movie has that spark. The second reason Disclosure Day feels so important is Spielberg himself returning to a lane he almost mythically owns. This is the filmmaker who helped define the modern blockbuster with Jaws, then reshaped family sci-fi wonder with E.T., cosmic obsession with close encounters of the third kind, and large-scale speculative storytelling with films like AI and War of the Worlds. Even when Spielberg makes something uneven, it almost always feels like it came from a living imagination instead of a boardroom algorithm. That matters more now than ever. We are living through an era where audiences are clearly tired of movies engineered to survive opening weekend and then evaporate. Disclosure Day looks like the opposite of that. It looks like a film made by someone who still believes the theatrical experience should leave people walking out stunned, emotional, and eager to talk. That becomes even more exciting when you consider how directly this movie seems to evolve Spielberg's earlier Alien stories. No, this is not literally a sequel to Close Encounters, but everything we keep hearing suggests it is spiritually connected to that territory. In fact, one of the most fascinating details around Disclosure Day is the idea that it may answer questions Spielberg raised nearly 50 years ago. Close Encounters dealt with mystery and wonder. Disclosure Day appears ready to deal with something heavier. What happens after the possibility of non-human intelligence stops being a mystery and becomes a truth that governments, institutions, and ordinary people have to emotionally survive? That is a major thematic leap. It means this is not Spielberg repeating himself. It is Spielberg returning to one of his defining obsessions with more age, more gravity, and maybe even more conviction. The third reason this feels like required viewing is the cast, especially Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor. If Disclosure Day is going to work at the level the early buzz suggests, it needs actors who can make impossible ideas feel grounded and personal. Emily Blunt is one of the best in the business at doing exactly that. She can move between steel and vulnerability without ever feeling artificial, which makes her a perfect fit for Margaret, who seems to go from ordinary TV meteorologist to someone radically altered by contact with the unknown. Blunt has already had a tremendous run lately, from Oppenheimer to The Smashing Machine to The Devil Wears Prada 2. And this feels like another role that could remind people how commanding she is when a film gives her real emotional terrain. Then there is Josh O'Connor, who has quietly become one of the most magnetic actors working right now. He has that rare quality where he can feel intelligent, fragile, odd, and deeply watchable all at once. Pairing him with Blunt gives Disclosure Day the kind of acting core that can carry spectacle without being swallowed by it. And the supporting cast is ridiculous in the best way. Colin Firth, Coleman Domingo, Wyatt Russell, Eve Hewson, Elizabeth Marvel, and more names give this thing real dramatic weight. This is not one of those concept movies where the idea is doing all the heavy lifting while the cast just delivers exposition. The lineup here suggests a film that knows performance matters. And that is a huge deal if the story is as emotionally ambitious as it seems. The fourth reason Disclosure Day feels like one of the summer's most fascinating releases is how perfectly it lands in the middle of growing public curiosity about alien life, hidden information, and government transparency. People have always wondered whether we are alone, but in the last few years that obsession has moved much closer to the mainstream. More leaks, more documentaries, more public speculation, more insider-adjacent comments, and more audiences open to the possibility that there is much more going on than they were told. That does not mean Disclosure Day is trying to prove anything literally, but it does mean the movie is arriving at exactly the right cultural moment. It is hitting when people are already primed to think about disclosure not as silly tabloid material, but as a concept with emotional, political, and even spiritual weight. That timing is almost perfect. And then there is the secrecy. The fact that the entire third act has reportedly been kept out of the marketing only adds to the sense that there is something much bigger waiting inside this movie than the trailers have fully shown. In an era when blockbusters often reveal half their climax through TV spots and featurettes, that restraint feels refreshing. It tells me Disclosure Day may actually understand the value of preserving and uncertainty, of letting audiences discover something on opening night instead of through a dozen chopped-up previews. Malign. For a movie built around revelation, that kind of discipline matters. The fifth and maybe most exciting reason is the market itself. Audiences are clearly hungry for movies that feel both familiar and new at the same time. Yes, sequels and comic book films still matter, but the last few years have also shown that original or semi-original event movies can explode when they feel distinct enough. Top Gun, Maverick, Barbie, Oppenheimer, and even more recent titles proved that people absolutely will show up when a movie feels bigger than content. That is the key word here, bigger. Not necessarily bigger in budget, bigger in presence, bigger in identity, bigger in the sense that people feel they need to see it in theaters, preferably before somebody ruins it for them. Disclosure Day has that kind of potential. It has the Spielberg name, the sci-fi mystery, the emotional scale, the cast, the secrecy, the cultural curiosity, and now the early reactions. That is a rare combination. No, none of this guarantees the movie will instantly rank among Spielberg's all-time best. That bar is absurdly high.